Hi everyone, welcome back to Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha. I'm so happy you are here. And today I'm speaking to a multi-talented artist who can sing, act, play multiple instruments, music direct, and conduct. It is Stephen Cuevas. Yay!
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm so happy that you're here. And for a little bit of background on Steven, he is a music director, musician, actor, and singer. And he was the music director and conductor of the first national tour of the Tony Award winning revival Once on This Island. And Broadway credits include Moulin Rouge, Tina, Once on This Island, Anastasia, and Kinky Boots. Off-Broadway credits are Kinky Boots again, Little Shop of Horrors, I Spy, I Spy, We Are the Tigers, Trip of Love, Closer Than Ever, and Iron Curtain. And also tour credits, again, Kinky Boots, Dr. Seuss, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the musical, Spring Awakening, and My Fair Lady. And he also has a BFA in musical theater from Emerson College. So welcome, Steven.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, and so nice to see you again. I mean, we met right when K-pop the musical was just closing. So how are you today?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's very cold here in New York City today, below freezing. So I'm staying cozy inside today.
Always a very
Yeah,
smart idea to be inside
yeah.
when it's cold. And yeah, just jumping right into it. I mean, I know recently you have been subbing in at Little Shop and you sub in for Moulin Rouge too, and you're just kind of everywhere. I always see you posting on your stories like I'm doing this one now, and I'm like, wow, he's just really doing all of the shows. Uh, and so it is so cool to just see you doing all the different things. And like just kind of jumping right into it, can you tell us a little bit about like where you grew up, like how you got interested in theater and, what has led to you to where you are now?
Yeah. So I am originally from Queens, and also grew up on Long Island. I'm a first generation Filipino American. And so because of that, I grew up listening to Lea Salonga and Miss Saigon and everything she's done. And I also watched all of the old movie musicals growing up. So that combination just catapulted me into the theater world. I didn't realize that it could be a career path until I got older and I saw Miss Saigon on Broadway and I actually saw Lea Salonga in her Tony winning role. She came back towards the end of the original run, and she still looked the same as she did, I think, 17 years prior. And yeah, that's when I decided I played music all my life. I played piano since I was 3, and I really love to be on stage and sing. And so I was like, all these things are leading me towards being in the theater. And so that is exactly what I did. Yeah.
Yeah, I know Lea Salonga is like the queen of all queens. It is why many of us are, inspired to come into this business. And now you're obviously a music director, conductor, but like when did that kind of shift for you when you went from acting to more just pursuing mostly music?
Yeah, so I was always a musician first. I studied piano since I was 3. I also played violin from a young age, also like percussion and things like that. I was always in my school music ensembles, whether it's choir and orchestra, band. And so that was always a big part of my life. Um, and I also did all the school plays and musicals. But my friends would always we would have gatherings, and someone would always have a piano, and we'd always gather around it. And who would sit at the piano? It would be me, and I would be playing through all of our favorite scores and musicals, and we would all be singing along. So I've been doing that all my life and all the way through college, and a lot of my college professors and specifically my music directors in my classes sort of saw that in me and said, you could very possibly do this and use your skills to either play in pits or play or to music direct. So after college, I got a job at a summer theater who was they were specifically looking for an actor and a music director. They wanted this one person to be in all of the shows across the season, in the ensemble, and then also music direct children's shows throughout the summer. And so I was hired to do that. And at the end of that summer, the producer came up to me and said, "We want to hire you next year as our main stage music director." So that's sort of how I got started, and that was my first professional gig as a music director. And so that sort of led me on my path to where I am today.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so interesting. And like, let me think for a second because it's so complicated. I mean, everyone who's ever been in musical theater has had an experience with like a music director or, someone conducting, but oftentimes I think it's different when it's just community versus like professional. And so, like, what exactly does the music directing like job entail in terms of just your day-to-day life and what you have to do throughout the process of putting a show up?
Uh, this is an interesting question because I think even a lot of people within the community, and the business don't truly know what a music director does. Uh, and we basically do a little of everything. So I like to think of it as the third kind of angle. If you want to think of the creative team as a triangle, so there's the director, the choreographer, and then there's the music director. So the music director is in charge of all things that kind of fall into the music of a show. So it's sort of my job to um, fulfill the vision of the director and translate that musically. And it's also my job to work collaboratively with the choreographer to make sure the music services their needs. Um, Also work obviously with the actors and to help teach them the music and to help just guide them along the way musically, lyrically, whatever it is to fulfill the vision across the board for everyone. Also have to work with the band or the orchestra and to sort of lead them in the right direction. And then beyond that, you also have to work with sound designers and all the other design elements to make sure that what I'm doing is helping them, and how can I further fulfill their vision and make sure that the audience has an overall great experience hearing the music and hearing everything that they need to to really have a satisfying night at the theater. So it it covers so many aspects, and sometimes also I need to play and or conduct during the show. So yeah, it's a lot of things, but I love doing it, and I love working with all the people I just mentioned. It's a lot of people I have to work with, and I love that collaboration.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, just thinking about it, like music directing is just you have to really go around to each of the different mediums that are like you're trying to just fulfill different things for each one and trying to connect all of them. It's kind of the glue that holds a show together.
Mhm.
And I mean that's just so crazy because I've never actually done like professional work, so I don't know what that's like in that sense, but just observing people who have to do conducting and then have to play the piano and then have to like lead the orchestra or have to do this. It's like, how can one person do all of that stuff and be okay? It's just absolutely crazy. And for you, like, what is the process of like auditioning to be a music director? Because it's not like a regular actor audition. You go in and sing your 32 bar cut. Like, what is that like? Because I have
Yeah.
no idea.
It's interesting. It's sort of um, I like to think I had really good luck, but I know that along the way, it's also because I've done some good work that maybe someone had seen, and then someone found me and hired me. You're right. There's not really an audition process, so it's sort of getting seen, getting your foot in the door, and then having people recognize your work and what you do. Um, and a lot of times musicians in on Broadway and off Broadway and tours and things like that. They get hired by a music contractor, basically like a casting director for musicians.
Mhm.
So we get assembled by this one person or a team of people, and sometimes it happens that way, or sometimes you have a director who is looking for a music director and they call you up, or a choreographer gives a producer your name that says you're great for a project. So I mean, there's so many different ways that a music director can be hired. There's no one way that a music director is hired. It's sort of that weird nebulous thing where right time, right place, someone happened to be thinking of you in that moment. um, and I also work as a sub musician, so that basically means I understudy musicians or conductors, and the way that happens is that person who does it regularly thought of you, texted you, emailed you, and said, "Do you want to come sub for me?"
Mhm.
And so basically, musicians and conductors, they find their own understudies or
Yeah.
sub. So that's also another way I get a lot of the jobs that I do.
Mhm. And how many shows are you kind of subbing for currently on Broadway?
I currently sub on Moulin Rouge as a conductor, and Little Shop of Horrors as a conductor. There are some other shows that I will be subbing on this season, but they haven't happened yet, and or the shows haven't opened yet. So stay tuned. Yeah, yeah,
Keep
yeah.
keep your eyes and ears out for more stuff
Oh
happening.
yeah.
And do you have like
Yeah.
a
Hopefully, I'll have a busy spring. Yeah.
yeah. I was say, do you have like a favorite show to like either music direct or conduct?
One that holds a special place in my heart was Once on This Island. It was my Broadway conducting debut, and it was uh, an incredible production. The show won the Tony Award for Best Revival when it was on Broadway, and the cast and the musicians and everyone in that theater were incredible. It was at Circle in the Square Theater, where of course K-pop was.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. We got to be the musicians were seen. We were in costume, and I also got to work with Leia Salonga. So full circle, full circle moment.
Yeah.
And then I got to take that production on the road as the music director. So again, a very special place in my heart. Uh, I also, strangely enough, got to do some additional recording on the cast recording.
Oh.
So I'm on one of the tracks that Leia Salonga sings on. Again, full circle moment. So that show holds a special place in my heart for
Uh-huh.
sure.
Yeah, people say don't meet your idols, but I think in that sense, I think it's okay. When it's Lea Salonga.
Oh yeah, I got to meet Leia Salonga. I'm a huge fan of the composers of that show as well, and they've become friends of mine now. So yeah.
Yeah. And like when we I guess when we saw K-pop, like what was it like watching a show in a theater that you worked in and got to conduct in?
Well, I love stepping into that theater all the time, and whatever show I watch there, because it's always vastly different than what it looked like previously. I think it is the most transformative theater on Broadway because that you can basically do anything you want in that space. You can configure it however you need to for your show. And so, I mean, obviously, the way it was in K-pop was wildly different than what it was on Once in This Island. On Once in This Island, the entire stage was covered in sand, and one of the vom areas was a pool of water. And yet in K-pop, it was all this, technological. Everything was rising and moving, and all the lights in it. It was super cool.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I loved seeing how they made it work for that show.
Yeah, I like what you said about it being the most like transformative, like transforming, I don't know what the word is, theater on Broadway because it's very true. Like all the productions that have been there have really just taken the space and made something so different where you feel like you're really
Hmm.
a part of the show instead of like stage. And then
Right.
like,
Yeah.
audience, it just takes
Yeah.
you to a different place rather than just like being disconnected where I don't know. I never got to see Once on This Island, but I could just imagine like with the sand and everything. And like I know Oklahoma, they served like I think chili or something, corn. I don't know,
Yeah.
but like
Wow.
it's just a different experience on Broadway. Um, and
Right. So, like, for example, in Once on This Island, the first row, their feet were in the sand.
oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I mean, you made your debut on Broadway kinda as, like, a sub, right? And
Mhm.
a conductor, and, like, since you are, like, a sub, like, how do you prepare yourself to go into a show that you're not with all the time? Where recently last week, you were just, like, with Little Shop for a little bit, and then sometimes you go to Moulin Rouge, like,
Yeah.
what do you prepare to go and do that?
It's a little tricky. So subs don't have rehearsal.
Mhm,
So it's basically up to me to learn the show on my own. I go observe the show, obviously, but it's really up to me to learn it, to learn all the ins and outs, especially as a subconductor.
mhm.
I learn basically every rhythm beat of the show, and I just have to be ready to go on. That's basically what it entails. For example, this past week I just did. I conducted a Little Shop of Horrors, and the last time I had done Little Shop of Horrors was 8 months ago.
Oh my
So
god.
I had to on my own refresh what the show was, um, be able to play all the music, and it was an entirely new set of principal actors that I'd never met before that night. So I just had to go with the flow. So yeah, I just have to be ready for anything.
And with most of the recent shows that you've done, it's not been like your normal orchestra space as well, where you're not just at the center of the stage. Moulin Rouge, you're all the way on the side, kind of hidden away in a little corner. And Little Shop, you're not like in the stage area at all. I think you're in like a little room. I think with the rest of the people, I've seen like people post pictures of it. And just what's like I guess what's the most fun or crazy thing that you've had to be as a conductor where it's not just your normal thing anymore. It's kind of it's a different experience.
Moulin Rouge is certainly one where I feel like I'm among the audience, and I'm very exposed. I mean, I'm visible to the entire audience the whole show, and also I have the experience of like having all of the actors be around me. I feel like I'm fully in the show and immersed in it.
Mhm,
So that's fun. But on some again, like Once on This Island, where we were again visible to the audience, but then we were also in costume, so
mhm,
we were part of the story. Like we were inhabitants of this island, and we just so happened to be playing these instruments. So again, that felt like we were part of the story. So I sort of love those moments, and I am also a sucker for shows that do that. For
mhm.
example, Hades Town, the entire band is also on stage in costume. They get up and dance with the actors. I love that. One of my very favorite shows, actually, that I saw was Once. I saw the original production with the original cast, and again, a story that is about how music connects people. And they had all the actors playing musical instruments.
Mhm,
Um, but they would join in very organic ways. And when their characters felt connected by the music, they would start to join on their specific instruments. So it felt it was very moving in a way for me. I love when theater does that, and really uses music as their storytelling, because that's what we do.
yeah, yeah. And since you've been trained as an actor and a singer, like, do you ever wish you could just get up and also like join the stage? It's so much fun all the time.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes yes, but in all of those instances, and whenever I am on stage or I know I'm visible to the audience, I don't hold back. I I I make myself part of the experience, and it really helps to it helps me to do the show. It makes it so much more fun.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I always love watching like either the conductor and the orchestra and like usually the playouts where I remember I think it was
Mhm.
Hamilton on tour where they're just like really going for it and like just putting
Yeah.
everything into that little moment because I know everyone's like now really, really watching them. And it's just such a
Yeah.
different experience, being on stage versus being, either in the pit or in the I don't know. Like Broadway is so different now in terms of orchestra, and I think it's really cool, especially with Little Shop having that little TV at the end, being like, "Hey, I'm here," um, and the rest
Right.
of it. And then like have any, mishaps ever happened where you have to either, like, vamp or do something where to kinda, like, either cover it up or adapt while you're conducting or subbing for a thing that you never thought would happen?
There were a couple times on Once on This Island where both on Broadway and on tour, um, where uh so the show is 90 minutes of music and it basically doesn't stop. So I'm playing the entire show. But there have been moments and shows in particular where they had to swap out actors in the middle of the show, and there was basically nothing I can do about it, and basically no way for me to get that information.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I would see someone else come on stage in the costume. Um, since the music doesn't stop, there was no way to have told me. So again, I just have to go with the flow, and hopefully everyone's okay and safe.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
yeah.
what can you do? There was also a time on Kinky Boots off Broadway where the we had to stop the show, unfortunately. I thought it was on me. I thought something was wrong on my end. I couldn't hear things, but it happened that there was something wrong with the sound system, so no one could hear what they needed to hear. So
Mm.
it ultimately became a safety issue. So we had to stop the show and reboot the sound system and take it from wherever we left off. It's live theater; it happens.
Yeah, you just adapt and move on, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
and the audience is usually with you too. They love those instances. They're
yeah.
like, "Oh, it actually is live."
Yeah, yeah, there were,
Yeah,
like, something goes wrong, it's always, like, the most fun. Um,
yeah,
and I remember because for Little Shop during the dentist scene, I mean, that whole part where it's, like, the lighting gets dark and, like and then, whoa, and everything, like, pops open again where, like, he's alive again. I remember just seeing I think it was Evan who's been on a Seymour this week, he was just, like, cracking up and laughing, and everyone was just, like, dying. Like, it's just
yeah.
moments where things don't always go the way you think they're gonna go. It's the most fun. Um,
Yeah.
and since you've conducted Kinky Boots on all 3 of, like, the different productions of Broadway, Off-Broadway, and touring, like, does it change at all between those different things? You have to adapt to a new environment, or what is that like for you?
Yeah, yeah, there have been certain differences between all three of them. First of all, the orchestration had changed all three times, like the number of musicians.
Mhm.
So that was different. Um, Obviously, like where you are in the theater is different, and where your other musicians are, or where you see the actors, they're all different. And then the show has sort of evolved over the years, because even though it is a very contemporary show, it was on Broadway 10 years ago, um, 11 years ago. Uh, it the discussion and language and ideology behind gender and gender expression has changed. So the creators have been very careful about how can we honor seeing drag queens and people who express their gender identity um, beyond the binary.
Mhm.
How can we address that and be respectful for those people? So yeah, it's ever changing. But the heart of the show is the same,
Mhm.
and the fun music has remained the same as well.
It's just a little bit. It needs to again like adapt, with the times, and that's always a good thing.
Hmm.
It's like
Yeah, that's
an
a
art
great thing.
can change, and it doesn't have to stay the same forever. It's like we can, that's
Hmm.
why revivals exist. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
And one of my friends, Emily Chen, wants to know, like, depending on different actors that are on when, Tammy Blanchard or Lena Hall or Natalie Mendoza versus Ashley Loren or Derek Klena versus Aaron Tveit. I know, especially with that one with Derek and Aaron, like the keys are different. How does that
Hmm.
affect you as a conductor and, and a music director in terms of just making having different things happening in the same show while it's still going?
Yeah, yeah. They every principal actor basically has their own take on it, which is wonderful. But you're right, it is different. So, for example, Derek Klena and Aaron Tveit, they do one of the songs in a different key. But not only that, the timing of their narration is very different.
Mhm.
So whereas Aaron Tveit is slower in parts, Derek Klena is a lot faster in a lot of parts. So it just becomes of how does their character, what is their rhythm and speed of their journey, so I have to pay attention to things like that. Also, with some people like Tammy Blanchard and Lena Hall, they're also very different performers. And Lena also does one of the songs in another key than
Mhm.
Tammy. So, first of all, I had to make sure that I have the right key in my book. uh, um, and you just have to go on the journey with them. I think being a sub helps me to always remain in the moment.
Mm,
And I'm always constantly just listening, so that I am with them, and it's my job to be with them throughout the show. They're the ones out there, exposing themselves, and I'm the one who needs to sort of translate that into a musical sense.
mhm.
So I get to go on that journey. Um, but yeah, especially in shows like Moulin Rouge, where the entire show, beyond the wild medleys and mashups that they have in the show, the entire show is underscored like it's a movie.
Mhm.
So it's very dependent on who is on in the roles. And I have seen so many different versions of every character because I not only conducted on Broadway, but I've also done it on tour.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's the whole separate way of seeing it because, tour sh- touring shows are like slightly different than the ones on Broadway, just to accommodate what they can do on tour
Mhm.
physically.
Yeah.
Um, but also all of the actors are different, so I I have to sort of adapt to that. So it's just a game of like being on my toes, and I love basically accompanying every single person. And
Mhm.
it also goes back to, me as the pianist, being like a collaborative pianist with actors and singers. And I just love to be with them when I'm at the piano and I'm just accompanying someone or accompanying someone's audition. Um, I love to be with them and try to match everything they're doing musically, intention wise, so that I am servicing them and their journey and
Mhm.
the story they're trying to tell.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so cool, especially with live music, where I think sometimes when you sing along with like a YouTube track or something, you're like trying to follow the track. Whereas if you're
Mm-hmm,
singing with someone live, it's a different experience where you get to be
mm-hmm.
together and you could take those liberties and like do something else instead of having to try and chase down a note that's gonna happen. Um, and just take
Right.
those moments of like uniqueness and doing something different. I mean, I saw both Tammy and Lena in Little Shop and they're both like drastically different. And then same thing
Mm-hmm.
for Aaron and I mean, I saw everyone that I listed. And it's just like different takes
Yeah.
on different characters, but it's like you never notice that it would be different in terms of like the
Mm-hmm.
conducting because you're just like paying attention to what's happening in front of you. But I'm sure for you, it's like you have to really pay attention. It's kind of like in a scene with an actor, you have to be like connected in terms of what you're thinking about, what you're doing, so that you can go towards the same end goal, which is just making a good show. And I think that's probably what makes like the best music directors and conductors is just when you feel like a sense of trust, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything you said. Yeah.
And do you have a dream show that you would either like to music direct or conduct for?
Oh, goodness. I've never music directed a Sondheim show. And I would love to do one. Um, oh, goodness. Um, Beyond that, I don't know. I would love to do a show where I feel like I have some ownership of.
Mm,
And whatever that is, it's sort of like, when an actor says, my dream role hasn't been written yet. I look forward to the day where I feel like I have put my personal stamp on something. And I feel like I've done that with some things, some projects I've done.
mm.
But I'm excited to do that again and be really proud of something. So
Yeah.
that, and also maybe a Sondheim show.
With all the crazy hard music that, comes with the Sondheim show.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to, like, single I'm like, "Okay, this is just too hard." To even fathom how to conduct that and, like, staying again with the other actors and keeping that trust, I mean, I just don't even know how to even think about it because Sondheim is so crazy complicated. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think, the greatest roles for us are the ones that we're able to really, ma put yourself into. I know I'm
Hmm.
waiting to see, like, as a person who wants to be in this business, I just like kind of where I fit and what I wanna do. Kind of like with you wanting to really have that experience. I mean, I know for Hamilton, like, I mean, Alex Lacamoire and everyone in the music, it kind of became a part of what people loved about the show. And then seeing him do all the other projects, you kind of see
Hmm.
that stamp that he's put on those different things in terms of just
Yeah.
bringing personality to it, and I think that's what anyone could ask for is to just be themselves in a show. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I also want to do more shows where I can see myself in the show. So I know there's Here Lies Love coming out right now, and I'm like, wow, those are actually my people and my ancestors, and I love seeing things like that. And of course, I'm rooting for them. So I would love to do something that I can personally connect with. Y- uh, and I think we're seeing a lot more of that too. A lot more people are like, we need to be heard and seen, and we need to have people in every department that reflects that. And I
Mm,
think that's really important. And I look forward to doing more projects like that.
yeah, definitely. I mean, especially with K-pop, that was a big one
Oh
with
yeah, for
people
sure.
behind the scenes and in front on the stage,
Hmm.
with Sujin, the music director, and Helen and
Yeah,
everyone just getting to put themselves into a project that was so
yeah, for sure. Yes.
and I'm very excited to see Here Lies Love, especially for the Filipino community, and just seeing
Uh-huh.
seeing what that brings because I think we're keeping the ball rolling, keep going with these kinds of stories that need to be told.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So for you, since we both saw K-pop closing show and we saw the panel and everything that happened, like what did it mean to you to see so many Asian American, Asian people on stage and also, I mean specifically Filipino as well. Just everyone.
Yeah, yeah. It was so special. I mean, I think, you know, all Asians are not the same, but it's such a supportive community here. And I mean, we want everyone to succeed. And so to see that and to see people who look like us, it was just so moving. And also, it was just so much fun.
Yeah.
Like, it was so good, and the music was incredible, and the dancing, like everything across the board. So it was so wonderful to be in that room for that final performance and feel all that love and support, and seeing so many Asian people in the audience really taking it in and really showing why a show like that would be important to the community. because
Mhm.
I think it is and it was, and we need to see more things like that.
Yeah, like we said, keep the ball rolling. Just continue to do
Absolutely.
projects like this where it means a lot to specific people. And I know for me, it was the first time I think I've ever seen someone of who's Taiwanese ever on a stage of Broadway.
Mm,
With Kate Mina Lin, who's the youngest person in the whole cast. And
yeah.
just and then seeing how, Julia Abueva is Filipino and James is half
Uh-huh.
Filipino, and just seeing
Uh-huh.
people able to see themselves with not specifically in just the sense of Korean and
Mhm.
Korean pop, but just Asian Americans as a whole. Of everyone is represented. There were many people who are either Chinese or Korean or Filipino,
Mhm.
Taiwanese, and just and being in that room to just experience the Asian joy was so much fun.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we need more shows of Asian joy. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of the shows that we relate to are very they're very dramatic and, something terrible happens at the end or,
Yeah.
our culture is not appreciated by the end of the show or
Yeah.
something like that. So, just to see Asians being celebrated for being themselves, like,
Mhm.
that's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, I think it was the most Asian people I'd ever seen in a Broadway theater, like, ever.
Yeah.
Like, during the panel where you could really just look at everyone, I was like, "Wow, this
Mhm.
is so cool." Um,
Uh-huh.
and for you, how does it feel to just be representing Asian Americans and most specifically Filipino Americans in terms of you being a music director and conductor, and where we don't usually see ourselves, especially within I think the music area as well, where we're so focused on the stage, we're not really focusing on the people that maybe aren't as seen or aren't as, attention called to. Yeah.
Yeah, I tell myself all the time, just just existing in the business is a radical thing,
Mhm.
because you're right. There aren't many people like me, doing what I do, and yes, there are several Asian music directors and things like that. But it's still not really the norm, and I still feel that stigma that someone would look at me and be like, are you good enough to be doing this? And you sort of always have to have that idea that you have to prove someone wrong about you. But you know what? I take that and view it as a positive thing. I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to show you that I belong. And just exuding that sort of energy. It really emanates when I do a show, and I feel it because I get a lot of people come up to me after shows and be like, "I never thought I would see an Asian conductor or whatever, um, doing this sort of thing," or "I didn't know that this was a possibility ever." Um, I remember there was one when I did My Fair Lady. You had mentioned it. I did My Fair Lady on tour, yes, but it was in Singapore.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so so the people were, the people who came to the show were already Southeast Asian. But then they saw me as the conductor of this American production, and everyone else on stage was mostly white. I think there was maybe one Asian person.
Mhm.
And the show is about finding difficulty in connecting and because of a language barrier or something. And I think the people who came to see that show really connected with Eliza Doolittle, the main
Mhm.
character. And especially they came up to me at the end of the shows, and even at the stage door, they would come find me, because they really appreciated that someone who looked like them was helping represent them and help tell the story. Um, and also there, I found that they really respected conductors and music directors.
Oh.
So I did have like a little bit of a fan club there. But yeah, it's really moving to me to hear all those people come up to me and say that they've really that I've opened their eyes to possibilities,
Mhm.
because sometimes I'm just there doing my job and I feel like I'm just there for the night, and but really what I'm doing is radical, and it's really eye-opening, and it shows everyone out there who's in that audience that someone like me can be doing what I'm doing. and basically I'm living my dream.
Yes, yes. No, you
Yeah.
are. Now you're like, oh shit, I should go back to Singapore and get the little fan club again.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, just I mean, the respect I have for every conductor, sometimes I always try to go up and say like, thank you so much. Just I remember when I was at Mean Girls, she was like right in front of us, and so I could just like see
Mm-hmm.
everything she was doing that was going on. And
Yeah.
it's insane and so crazy to what you and everyone who is a music director or conductor in this business do is just it's remarkable in terms of how many things you kind of have to juggle in terms of you having to learn the show if you're a sub, or you having to like communicate with the choreographer, the dancers, the actors, the singer, like you kind of have to do everything, which is insane. And so I just have so much respect for you and for anyone else who's doing this, because I think maybe like people don't talk about it as much. It's just kind of a given. But I think it's like, well, they're just as much of a star as anyone on that stage all the time. It deserved to be recognized as such. So yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
oh, keep going, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, and in that respect, I something that I'm passionate about is making sure that we know who those people are. Like when press releases go out, who is the music team? Who's the music director? A lot of times we don't see that, or they're not on posters, or we don't even see them. They're in fine print in the credits, and it's like actually they're doing so much, and they really deserve the credit. So I really hope to see that these people get their due. It doesn't even have to be me. It's not me. I want everyone to see the incredible work that these music directors are doing.
Yeah, I know, like you said, with the posters, or at least just mentioning them, making sure people know their names, because it's insane that it doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
And that I think for me, I knew about Sujin, the music director on K-pop, just because I was so obsessed with it and looking it up. But I'm sure many people didn't know who she was, or didn't know all of the things
Yeah.
she did, or that she'd been working on the show for years, or it's just things like that, because music directors really do put so much into the show, and to not get it back as much is like, I don't know, it's heartbreaking to me, because it's just the recognition isn't there, even though it's very well deserved. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and in that case, oh my goodness, Sujin, and also um, Amanda Morton,
Oh yeah,
they were
yeah.
both making their Broadway debuts in these incredible positions as music director and associate music director, and two Korean women leading this show
Yeah.
written by a Korean woman. I mean, it's like we have to get their names out there. They need to be doing this kind of things, and people have to know their names. So,
Yes.
yeah.
So like, and with Here Lies Love, I'm really hoping that like, there's representation and on the stage, and behind the scenes, and in the orchestra, and throughout that whole production. I'm really hoping, I'm praying that that can happen, because I think we can tell our own stories in that sense, not
Hmm.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, you could totally like, it would be such a different experience to have someone who's Filipino conducting it versus someone who's maybe white, who doesn't quite it's a different story in terms of it's not their story. I don't know if that makes any
Hmm.
sense, but just like
Yeah.
in some way we can take control of that, and tell it like Sujin and Amanda and everyone else who is behind those kinds of projects, where it's like, let us tell it, like please. And just let us be
Absolutely.
seen for who we are, in terms of just what we want to put out there, and what we want our culture to be seen as in an industry where we're not recognized as widely.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for you, like, what does representation mean to you as someone who's been an actor and musician, conductor, or music director, and just and everything? What does representation mean to you in terms of in all of those respects, everywhere?
Yeah. Representation means so many different things. It can be, uh, whether it's just inclusion and including other people to help tell the story, uh, or it can be making sure that certain kinds of people are seen. And like there's an active uh, sense of having those people be seen, heard, whether it's Korean people or people who use wheelchairs or people who are neurodiverse or anything. And I think those people help tell a certain kind of story, and again, it's what I go back to. Just existing is radical, and you already have so many layers. Just having one person, not even just like a full cast, but having one person up there representing it just means so much because it adds those layers and upon layers that are unsaid but seen and heard and felt. Um, Also, I think people don't realize that these specific stories, the more specific a story is, the more universal it is.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, how many people responded to something like A Strange Loop, which
Yeah.
is about a fat queer black person making a musical. I mean that
Yeah.
I don't relate to that personally, but I related to the story and seeing all that kind of representation on stage and the trans representation in that show as well. I mean, it's so deeply felt.
Mhm.
So I'm such a cheerleader of any project that has a particular voice or is really inclusive in terms of their casting or in their every department.
Mhm.
And every department needs to be inclusive. That's really important too, because it is not just the people on stage um, that we need diversity. I see it all the time when we get into these award seasons, there's always like first time of this has happened, or first time of that
Yeah.
has happened across every single category. And it's like, wow, we're in 2023 and we're still doing firsts. I
Mhm.
mean, we need to help fix that. And I
Yes.
think just including and hearing other people's points of views and seeing them, seeing their visions, and just giving people opportunities, it's just all really important.
Yeah. Yes. It's yes
Yeah.
to everything that you said. And what is your advice to young Asian American kids who maybe want to be a music director or conduct on Broadway?
um, really love what you're doing. Be good at what you're doing, and then really love it and take care of yourself and your talents. And people are going to recognize that. Um, I think I I don't know if it comes across, but I'm actually like a very humble person, and I don't like to brag about what I do. but I feel very lucky to have done so many projects that I have loved and cared about because I just was myself.
Mhm.
So I think continue to just be yourself. If this is something you really love to do, continue to be good at it and improve the things that you're bad at and
Yeah.
just keep loving it and come say hi to me. I mean, I will be your cheerleader. I love seeing other people out there who look like me, who look like us, and doing all the things.
Yes, yes. And how can we all like find you on social media, help follow you, help keep supporting everything that you're doing, and also keep track of when you're going on and you know.
Yes, I you can find me at Stephen M. Cuevas across all platforms. I believe I don't know. And yeah, I had to add my middle initial as fun story because there apparently is another Stephen. There are multiple Stephen Cuevases in the world, and I think they are also in the entertainment field, but like in the journalism aspect of it.
Oh my
So
god. Make sure you get the M. Make sure you get the
make sure you get
M.
the M. Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for coming on the pod and just being here and talking about your experience. Because I don't think you've ever like interviewed a music director before. So it's like first one, yay!
Oh, yay! My pleasure. It's been a
Yeah.
joy.
Yeah, thank you to everyone listening, and please make sure to follow me at Broadway Corner with Ashley Haw, Broadway_corner on most platforms, and make sure you're also following Steven at Steven M. Cuevas because we want to keep supporting you and making sure we're just up to date with everything that you're doing in terms of if you're subbing at Moulin Rouge or Little Shop, which I love.
Oh yeah, and I have more dates to come. I'm
Oh,
about to post them.
yay!
Yeah,
Yeah, right now, Steven is the Asian representation in Little Shop right now.
yeah,
So keep supporting and just thank you to everyone listening. Hope you have an amazing day and we'll see you next time. Yay!
yay!
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha. Make sure you're following me on Instagram at Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha and at Broadway_Corner on Instagram for updates on new episodes. And make sure you're following Steven at Steven M. Cuevas on Instagram. Thank you so much for listening.